Hello everyone, welcome to our learning series of how to use Unreal Engine for architectural visualization. In this video, we're going to talk about the cinematic production in our project sample. To pick up from our previous videos, we basically have imported our model inside Unreal Engine, set up the lighting using an HDRI with a directional light, and we have added all of our materials and the foliage assets using Megascan's plans and a speed tree sample that we have exported from speed tree. Now it's time to export some cinematic preview of our project sample here. Assuming, for example, in any example of your or any case you're having with a project or an architectural project, if your client requires some test renders or some presentations of your project, basically if you're coming from 3D Max or any other 3D software, you basically gonna render some images, or maybe you're gonna do some draft renders to just showcase the current progress of the project. But most of the time this will consume a lots of effort and hours. It may not be produced in a very short of time. Inside Unreal Engine, that's a different case, because inside Unreal Engine you will actually be able to produce previews of your project, for example using videos or images in a very fast way. So to do that, we're gonna use the level sequencer of Unreal Engine, and we're gonna do that by going to the cinematic icon, click on it, and we'll find two options of the level sequencer. The first one is add master sequence. This is basically used by large teams in case of game production or movie production, where they're gonna have lots of team members working on the same project and adding different cameras and different camera angles. So it's basically a huge amount of team members working on this the master sequence. For our case, we can use the level sequence as it fits our project scale, and it's basically where we're gonna work faster to produce these cinematics. So I'm gonna press on the add level sequence, and I'm gonna create a folder called cinematic. I'm gonna name this level sequence Arch Viz Animation, and save it. So once the sequencer open, you'll find that the panel of the sequence actually window is composed of a time frame, where if you familiar with this, it's basically the same concept of what you have inside 3D Max or any other softwares. And on the left side, where we're gonna have a bunch of tools, where this is the working area of where we're gonna add our shots, and the green button where you can add actually different items, and this is what we're gonna see later on this video. And above that you'll find some icons. Some of them are very familiar to you, which is the save, search, and this is where you create a shot, and the render process, where we're gonna see it on the end of this introduction, and some settings where you can show and hide some of the objects that you have inside the sequencer. And later on you'll have also the key and the snap and the number of frames per second that you prefer to work with. So once the sequencer is opened, you'll basically need to duck this window to a preferred place. If you have a second monitor, actually you can put it on that monitor, or if you prefer to put it beside the content browser. So to start, we need to know, for example, how we're gonna start using this sequencer in our project. First, let's start by arranging our viewport panel here, or window, by going to click on the arrow key and going to the layouts and choosing, for example, 2 panes. So now, as you can see, we have divided our viewport panel into 2 separate windows. The first one, I'm gonna make it it's already chosen as a cinematic viewport. Basically, if it's the default one, we're gonna make it the cinematic viewport, and the left one we're gonna keep it as the viewport. And anytime you wanna hide your tools, just press some G and press back again to show them back. So on the right side, our cinematic window here represent our preview of our animation. So if I press play here, you can see that the time frame is moving, but there is nothing actually in it because we did not create anything yet. And we can maximize our windows by pressing on this small square here, and maybe we're gonna need to adjust our window scale just to fit in our viewport. So I'm gonna bring it back to 2 panes. Sorry about that. And as you can see, there are few options also, like the active save or the title save. Most of these options, some people use it in the animation, but maybe we're not gonna need it at this stage. So let's talk more about the time frame and how we can extend our timeline before we start to arranging our shots. So currently we have our elements here. We have a green line bar here and a red one, and this shows the beginning and the end. I'm gonna hide our foliage assets here so we can just have a smooth, faster way of working on the engine. So back again on the time frame. This is our time frame line that will locate where are we exactly on our timeline, and we can zoom in on our timeline by pressing Control and moving the mouse cursor forward and backward to zoom out and in, and basically we can click on the home button just to go back to our default layout of the timeline. Some of the control here that are very helpful, like for example, this is where you gonna push the time frame to start from the beginning of our animation, and this is to the end. And for example, if you want your animation to stop at this point, for example, you can press on the set at this end. So it's basically will specify where your animation will end according to the time line frame. You can basically also increase your frame timeline by writing, for example, your let's say for example we want to extend this to 300 frames, and as you can see it's already extended, and we can go to our end frame by pressing here and writing 300, and again by pressing to the end. So now we can see that we have extended our timeline animation by just writing the extension that we want. So now we're gonna start looking how we're gonna add our shots into our sequencer. So to start, we need to understand that we are looking now on the master sequencer, meaning that we can have a bunch of level sequencer that will be arranged accordingly in this scene, representing let's say for example shot 1 and shot 2 and shot 3. So let's start, for example, by going to our cinematic and right click and going to the animation, and let's create a level sequence and name this as shot 1, sorry, shot 01. And then when I go back to the sequencer, I'm gonna press on the track and add shot track. As you can see, it showed me that there is a plus sign where I can add the shot, and here I have my Arch Viz Animation, but this is the master basically, so I will add just only the shot. So now I have one shot added to the master sequencer. Let's add another two shots and see how we can move from one to one on this sequencer. So either I can right click and create again, or I can choose the shot 01 and press on Ctrl W, and now I have shot 02, again Ctrl W, and I have shot 03. So going back to the sequencer, I'm gonna add here as you can see shot 2, and again I'm gonna add shot 03. So the shots have been added, but unfortunately mistakenly, because the time frame was on the end of our timeline, they have been added after the time frame. So if we remove them back again and move our time frame to the beginning and add our shot again, just shot 1, now we have our shot added to our time frame from the beginning, and adding also second shot and adding third shot. Alright, so what we have exactly here is a representation of our 3 different shots for our starting animation project. If you double click on the shot 1, it will load you to the level of the shot 1 sequencer, and if you can see here that we have, if we press on the Arch Viz Animation, we'll go back to the master sequencer where we have all the shots, and we can arrange the shot basically by moving them, by dragging them and arranging them as we wish or as we prefer. Let's increase this, for example, by 600, and let's move our cursor example to here, or right here, let's say 500, and specify that this is our time frame. So now we have our shot 1, shot 2 and shot 3 that we're gonna start adding some animation to it. So to start, let's double click on shot 1, and now we need to add a camera, because as you can see we don't have anything yet added to our scene. We can either use one of the cameras that we have added earlier. So I'm gonna go and choose, for example, let's say Cinema Actor 5, or maybe another one. Let's choose something that, yeah, let's choose this one, for example. And this is Cinema Actor 1, so I'm gonna write here, sorry, and we just extend this, we have Cinema Actor 1. So we need to add this camera to our shot 1 sequencer by going, for example, to the track and go to Actor to Sequencer. We can either again write the camera name and add it, or as you can see, because I have chosen the camera on the world outliner, it shows here that the camera is selected and I can add it immediately. So once the camera is added, it shows here that this is our shot, as we can see on the respective viewport. Alright, so now if we press on the Cinema Actor 1, the cinematic preview of our panel will show our animation or our camera that is located on shot 1. Now we can start basic animation movements of the camera by moving the time frame and putting some keyframe on the movements of or the location of the camera. So let's start, for example, from frame 0, and we want to basically move the camera from this point to this point, just to have a basic animation flow of shot 1, or in the first camera. So we can do that by going to the transform location of the camera, which represent the location and the rotation and the scale. And if we add a keyframe here, we basically have now a location specified at this frame that this camera is located here. And we can do that also by pressing S as a shortcut to set up a keyframe here. So let's move our time frame, for example, to 135 frame, and let's move the camera by the basic control keys, that's the ASDW, and let's move it, for example, to this point. Then go back to the transform location and press S. So now if we move our time frame, you can see that we have a little bit of animation from the starting point where we have specified our starting frame to the end point. So if we go back to the Arch Viz Animation, we have our first animation represented here, and if we play it here on the cinematic panel, we need to click on the camera so we can have our preview of the camera on the cinematic view. So it represents the first camera movement. So nothing after that is being shown on the cinematic because we did not create actually for shot 2 or 3. So let's go to shot 02, and let's start, for example, by another camera. Let's, for example, choose camera 4, and let's choose it here, and again track, add to sequencer camera 4. So the camera have been added. We need to adjust our time frame. Let's put it starting from 0 for this shot, and again at the transform let's press S to locate the first frame. So I'm gonna move this either manually or, for example, by writing 120, and let's move the camera a little bit toward the building. This is enough, and then again press S for locating the next frame. So again we have our camera animated. So if we go back to the Arch Viz master sequencer, again let's just preview it one more time. As you can see, first camera, then moving to the next camera where we also need to specify which camera we want to show on the preview. Don't worry about the transition between the two cameras. We're gonna adjust later on how we can fade from one camera to another. So lastly, shot 03. For this one, for example, we can basically create a camera exactly from starting from the shot 03 level sequence by choosing, for example, let's go to at this point, for example, and pressing on create a new camera, and this is immediately will create a camera for our level sequencer. If you go outside the time frame, you'll find that your camera setup have come inactive because you're outside of the time frame, and this is only happening if you create your camera from inside the level sequencer. So let's preview our camera here and pressing here. So again moving from frame 0 and pressing S, and let's go back, and we need first specify which frame we want to start from. So I'm gonna move to, let's say, 130, and move the camera back a little bit, and then press S, and now we have our third camera movement. Going back to the Arch Viz master level sequencer, we now have our whole sequencer shot, and our animation basically is arranged according to our camera movements. So right now we have our cameras arranged in this sequence. Basically you can actually arrange their flow on the video, like if you want to arrange which one you want to start with and which one you want to end, or maybe if you want to, for example, cut from camera 1 and move from move to the second one. If you move your time frame, let's say for example here, and then right click and edit, you'll find that there's an option to trim left or right or split. So basically if you choose split and then move this part to here, straightforward, you can do the same thing here again and split this. And sorry, we have to choose where we want to split it. So right click, edit and split, and we can arrange them differently, which one should start before the other. So now that we have a basic understanding of how the sequencer start, as we have seen so far, we created a level sequencer and added our shot later on, and this is how you start with the basic setup of the level sequencer to start producing your animation. From this point you can actually start exporting this animation as a video or as an image sequence, as we normally do if we gonna export the animation from any platform like 3D Max or any other software, and import them inside After Effects, and specify the resolution, how you want to render them, and basic options that like for example the compression and where you want to save your video or image sequence. But this is actually just a way to do this through the basic setup of the camera. But we want to use this or we want to do an architectural visualization animation using a better tool represented inside Unreal Engine for the camera movement, because normally the camera movement sometimes can varies from one location to another, or from one judgment to another. Let's say for example you want to go up and then go down to the camera and move to this direction. This is going to be a little bit tricky if you're going to do this manually, but we're going to learn in our next video using some of the tools like the camera rig crane or the camera rig rail, which is similar to what is being used inside the film industry, and how to move the cameras smoothly from location to another. And we're gonna also talk more about how to add more effects on the level sequencer. So at this point, I hope this demonstration have helped you to get a basic idea of what exactly the level sequencer and how you're gonna basically start to set up your camera movements and prepare just a basic animation presentation of your project. So in the next video we're gonna go in detail and how to create a more advanced setup for our animation, and I hope this video help you to understand the cinematic introduction to Unreal Engine. So thank you very much, and see you in the next video.